Welcome to the Siege Podcast, a weekly show where the Siege guys break down this week's college games from a betting perspective, give you tools and information you'll need before placing your bets, and give you picks of their own. Be sure to follow them on Twitter at PicksSiege. Now, here are the Siege guys, Devin Hadley, Jordan Hadley, James Roth, and your host, Travis Harris.
And welcome back to another episode of the Siege Podcast. We want to apologize. We had some technical difficulties last week that did not allow us to get the podcast out in time. So hopefully you follow us on Twitter at PickSiege, where we sent out at least all four of our locks of the week. So you had that. But we're back this week and hopefully each week going forward. You may have noticed some upgrades to our podcast this week. We now have an intro, thanks to Mary Gaida, and some awesome graphics for the video, thanks to Johnny 4K from Johnny 4K Productions. That way you're not just staring at a blank screen. Only the best for our loyal Siege listeners. Speaking of Siege, let's review how we did last week. Our clients had a great week. You know, we were saying all week to each other in our group text how much we love the slate. This for college football last week, and we were right. Our VIP clients had a huge 4-0 sweep, winning a positive 5.4 units, which makes the $100 better up $540 with us just this past weekend. A lot of winning left to do this college football season, so be sure to hit us up on Twitter at PickSiege if you want to jump on board for the remainder of the season. Let's take a look at last week. I'll start, guys. The entire Texas fan base and the whole university is owed an apology from Sam Ehlinger. I mean, they have just been absolutely terrible ever since his "we're back" comment a couple of years ago. The SEC is just licking their chops right now, waiting for Texas to join the conference. They lost outright this last week to Kansas as a 31-point favorite. That's got to be rock bottom, I would think, losing outright to Kansas as a 31-point favorite. Quick shout out to Kansas, though. They did win their second game of the season, which does cash their over wins of 1.5 this year. So anyone brave enough holding on to a Kansas over wins total ticket, congrats to you. That took some balls. Dev, what do you take away from this last week?
Yeah. First thing that comes to mind is the Michigan-Penn State game. Hell of a game, great finish. Michigan is what I would call a complete team. I mean, they don't really have many weaknesses other than their head coach possibly, but Penn State hasn't won a close game all year other than when I lost Iowa. Yeah, I don't think they won a close game all year other than Auburn early in the year, but yeah, I mean, I know we were big on Michigan. They cashed two parlays for me, actually, personally. So not mad about that at all. And the under hit. So that game went about as I expected it to. And, the Wolverines got it done. Obviously, they have Maryland this week, but that showdown in in Ann Arbor against Ohio State is going to be one hell of a game, I think. So looking ahead there, but yeah, I think Michigan is what stood out to me last week.
Yeah, that'll be a good game when Ohio State comes to town in Ann Arbor for sure. When you talk about weakness at coach, Penn State's right there with them. I mean, James Franklin is terrible, terrible coach. He's gotten some thoughts or looks. I don't know what you'd want to call it from LSU. They can have him. Actually, I'd like him to stay in the Big Ten. He's just a terrible coach. But we'll move on. James, what about you? What do you got takeaway from last week?
My takeaway is, unfortunately, Ohio State. They seem to be peaking at their normal good, the right time for them per usual. I mean, it could have been a letdown spot for Purdue easily, and also being in Columbus is tough, but they just are looking virtually unbeatable, at least for Big Ten teams at this point. We'll see what Sparty has for them in Columbus. seem to always play them tough there, but unless there's some dramatic changes in state secondary, I really don't see that game being very close after probably the first quarter. So we'll see how that goes for him. Walker probably bust some runs for him to keep him in it, but I think Ohio State's receivers are just going to be too much. I'll let you guys talk a little bit about the Baylor-Oklahoma game. I know you guys are really big on Baylor. Other than that, look forward to this Utah-Oregon game this week. But as for this last week, that's about it for me.
Yeah, Baylor, that was a huge outright win against Oklahoma. We saw that coming here at Siege. We sent that out as a 2-unit play, Baylor +6. They win by 10, I think it was. Baylor's just they're just really good, and Charlie Brewer's gone, and that's got to be the reason why. Look at Utah; they're ranked again. They don't have Charlie Brewer anymore. I like Baylor again this week. I know we kind of talked about it before the show today. Kind of looks like it could be a trap line for Baylor, but I still think they're the better team at Kansas State at a pick 'em or maybe -1 right now. But they're just rolling on all cylinders for sure. Jordan, takeaway from last week?
Yeah, you pretty much nailed it with our big weekend with Siege. We talked about last week Baylor in that bounce back spot, and they did not disappoint. Also, we talked about Wake Forest in a bounce back spot, and they win outright. We mentioned Michigan and the under; those both hit. So yeah, we couldn't have asked for a better weekend. We did love the board, and it showed. So I like to slate again this week. Yeah, a lot of games to look forward to, so I'm excited.
Yeah, we hit another kind of perfect storm, which it happens a couple times a year, especially in college football, where there's just a lineup of overreactions that, especially on both sides of the ball, that we're able to take advantage of. And that's kind of what you alluded to, Jordan, this past weekend. I don't love the slate as much as you do this week, Jordan, looking into this week. But there's definitely some value plays there. And I'm just personally going to be looking at quality over quantity this week. Just because there's not a ton that I like out there, but there's definitely some good value. So let's get started taking a look at these matchups. Let's check the ranked matchups first. Huge game for 3 of us on this podcast. Michigan State -19 against Ohio State. I don't have a lot of thoughts on this one. Alabama -20.5 versus Arkansas, and Utah -3 versus Oregon. You guys have any thoughts on any of these games? I mean, MSU +700 on the money line. Can they get it done on Saturday?
I don't see it happening, Trav. Like James said, their secondary is so bad right now, and Ohio State's been lighting it up with Stroud, and their receivers just connected on all cylinders. So I think they score at will. That total's kind of high, 67, 66.5. But I mean, I would still lean the over. I think State will put up some points. Ohio State's, been up and down on defense. So in order to, keep it close, State's going to have to pull out all the tricks and make some big plays happen. So I would lean the over if anything. But yeah, I think State's in big trouble, to be honest.
Yeah, same here, Jordan. I have the same exact thoughts. If this game, I looked at the weather, first thing I looked at, because if it was going to snow and there was 25-mile-an-hour winds, then yeah, maybe State had a chance. But it's going to be like 47 degrees, sunny, no wind. The over is the play 100%. I think Ohio State puts up 50, at least 45. I think State scores as well. Ohio State's pass defense is ranked like 109th in the nation. Michigan State's is like 103rd. This over-under set way too low. I think it'll be bet up close to 70 points will be the final number. Right now it's at 66.5 on Tuesday. Definitely lean the over. I leaned Michigan State at first if you can buy it to 21, but I don't know. I can see them getting blown out very badly here, and I'm staying away from the spread. But unfortunately, I don't think they have any chance. I just hope Kenneth Walker has a good game. They keep it somewhat competitive, and maybe he can still win the Heisman somehow. That's about the best case scenario as a State fan, I think.
Yeah, we could really use the no-fly zone back from when we last beat Ohio State, which was an awesome game. It's a good call on the weather, Dev. I'm trying to hope to mimic that. It doesn't look like it, at least as of right now. We were at the bar in Grand Rapids watching that game with Drew Neitzel when we won that game. So that was a lot of fun. Hopefully we can do that again, either win against Ohio State or hang out with Drew Neitzel. That'd be cool too. James, any thoughts on either of these three ranked matchups?
Yeah, it's like we said, I think you guys are on the right track with that MSU Ohio State game. I mean, if it was any other time, I would say Ohio State may look ahead to the Michigan game, but I mean, obviously they can't look ahead for this week, so I don't think that'll happen. The Alabama Arkansas game, same thing. I don't see Arkansas slowing down Alabama whatsoever. They seem to be rounding into form. I know they had a kind of a little bit of a hiccup there against LSU, but I mean that game's traditionally always going to be close. So, but Bama, they just got to play New Mexico State, of course, to get back into shape there. So I think Bama rolls, and like so, I think I'm really looking forward to the Utah-Oregon game just because I really want to see Oregon lose. I faded Utah earlier in the year, but I'm hoping the Utes can hold this one out. So.
Yeah, that'll be a good game. I also hope Oregon loses. I do not want to see them in a playoff. I don't think they're that great.
Yeah.
I'm just a big Charlie Brewer hater. I'm going to say it. That he's not a good quarterback. There's no coincidence at all that Utah is now favored against number 3 in the nation, Oregon, when they don't have him behind center anymore. If he's playing, I'm hammering Oregon, but he's not. So I'm going to stay away, but I will be hoping for Oregon loss because I'm petty like that. Any other games you guys have your eyes on this week before we move into our underdog pick of the week? Because I have one going back to the Conference USA. I just love watching Conference USA football. UTSA -4.5 at home against UAB. UTSA, they are still undefeated, 10-0. Had a little bit of a scare against Southern Miss last week. That was one of my locks, them covering 33. They only won by 10. But I talked a little bit about earlier overreactions on both sides of the ball this week. UAB wins outright against what I feel is a better Marshall team. And then UTSA, of course, only wins by 10 as a 33-point favorite. I think we're looking at a little bit of overreaction on both sides of the ball. I think UTSA is a much better team, which pains me to say because I've won a lot of money on UAB over the last few years. I've enjoyed watching them play. But I'm going to take the Roadrunners -4.5 at home in a huge game for them, trying to make a statement to get a really good bowl game if they can stay undefeated. So I'm looking at Conference USA, UTSA -4.5 against UAB. So with that, we can just move right into underdog picks of the week. Dev, you want to start us off?
Yep. I'm fading you because my underdog pick is UAB. I got them +5 this morning. And it's simply because UTSA has played nobody. They have 0 good wins. I mean, their resume is fraudulent, in my opinion. You could call UTEP a good win, but I wouldn't consider UTEP a good team. I truly think UAB is a better team, to be honest. They just won at Marshall, like you said. Marshall's a pretty good team. And UTSA, you can't consider yourself a good team if you only beat Southern Miss by 10 points. I mean, any good team would demolish them. They're a bottom feeder program in Division I football, a bottom 5 team this year. And they've been getting blown out by everybody. And UTSA goes in there and has a scare. And that's just unacceptable. I know the line should be maybe closer to 7. It might be a little bit of an overreaction, but I think UAB wins out right here. They have a good experienced quarterback, solid defense, very fast. And it's more of a fate of UTSA. I think they're one of the more overrated teams in the country, and they're not good enough to go undefeated. It's just that simple.
Sure. No, you made good points. I wouldn't be mad if UAB wins, but yeah, no, I don't hate that pick, Dev, at all. I guess I'll go next real quick. We talked about Michigan State earlier. One of my big golden rules that I try not to break is not to bet with my heart, but I looked over trying to find some better value in some of these underdogs, and so few of them were siege plays, which we didn't want to give out for our client's sake. So I'm just going to take Michigan State here just as a flyer, plus 19, betting with my heart, not my brain. Hopefully I don't get burned. Hopefully Michigan State wins, obviously, but if they lose and lose by more than 19, that'll be a double loser. So I'm going to take Sparty here. How about you, Jordan?
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to South Florida for covering last week. I'm an underdog pick of the week since he got it done. But like I said, they're not good enough right now to beat any team by 20 plus points. So good matchup with SMU this week. That'll be interesting. SMU's look bad, but personally staying away from that game. But this week I'm taking ULM, Louisiana Monroe, going back to the well. They're at LSU, but they're getting 29 points. And LSU hasn't beaten a team by 29 all year. So I'm going to stick to that train. I mean, they've played some bad teams like McNeese State. They didn't win by 29. And Louisiana Monroe is a lot better than McNeese State. So I think they put up a fight and keep it within, 29 points. So that's my lock for the underdog this week.
ULM, that's your squad this year. I think you took them earlier this year on the podcast, right? And they won outright as like a double-digit dog.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Going back to
it. James, how about you, underdog?
I'll say, unfortunately, LSU broke my streak last week of my 3 in a row underdogs winning outright. They ended up pushing +3 in overtime. So that's unfortunate. This week, I'm actually sticking in the SEC and doing one of my favorite things, taking a home dog in a night game. So I'll take South Carolina getting 7.5 against Auburn. No Bo Nix. I just don't see Auburn. They've lost two games in a row now, and that was with Bo Nix. I know he just got hurt in the last game, but I just see South Carolina's 1 win a game from being bowl eligible. So I think they bring it here in a night game and fully upset outright. So it's just that simple.
You bring up a great point. We're getting towards the end of the regular season, and a lot of teams are trying to get to that magic number 6 to become bowl eligible, which we would like to think would provide them a little bit more of incentive to win, especially if they're going up against a team who doesn't really have a whole lot left to play for. Either they're not even going to become close to bowl eligible, or they're already bowl eligible, and whether they win or lose won't really determine much in the postseason. So thanks for bringing that up, James. It's something that we are definitely keeping an eye on here on Forward, and we want our listeners to keep an eye on when you're placing your bets as well. So with that, let's move right on into locks of the week. James, you want to keep it rolling and give us your 3 locks?
Sure. First one here, I'm taking the Rutgers Penn State under 45.5. This one is simply off. Clifford is banged up. He was banged up clearly during the Michigan game and definitely after the Michigan game. So I think, if he takes some more hits and if Penn State's backup has to come in, we all know what that means. But I just see that game just kind of being punt city and being pretty low scoring. So I think 45.5 is way too high. The next game is kind of a big number here, but taking an Army -37 against UMass. I believe UMass just lost to Maine. And I believe they also, the week before that, lost to Rhode Island. So I'm going to take Army here, laying a big number. It's a home game for them. And I think being this late in the season, the last thing UMass wants to see is an option. So I could see them just completely just laying it, rolling over and just laying an egg here, and Army winning potentially really big. So we'll hope they cover that big number, but we'll see. My third play will be Tennessee and the South Alabama over 62.5. Basically, when Hooker's healthy, you can't take a Tennessee under is basically what I've learned the last few weeks. So even against Georgia, that over ended up hitting for us. So I think that's just that simple. 62.5. I think Tennessee has the potential to score in the 50s here themselves. So hopefully they get it done.
I didn't even know they played football in Maine.
Yeah. Apparently they don't. Not very well. Be well enough to be UMass, apparently.
Good point. Yeah, they're. I like that fade against UMass for sure. Jordan, how about you? What do you have?
First play, one of my favorite things to do is take a Wake Forest over. So we're going to take the over 56 against Clemson. I know Clemson's offenses look bad, but this is Wake Forest defense we're talking about, and anyone scoring on them right now. So I think that total is way too low. Anything under 60, again, on a Wake Forest game, I'm taking the over every time. Next play is the Baylor Kansas State under 50. Two good defenses going at it. Should be a good game. I think that stays under 50 with these. So locking that in. And my last play is something I don't think we've done on the podcast yet. Was take a first half line, and we're taking Bama minus 11.5 against Arkansas. Like James said, I don't see Arkansas keeping up with Bama this game. I like that first half line a lot. So, yeah, Bama rolls to start, and then, puts in the backups hopefully second half, and they roll. So let's stay hot.
Yeah, I love all three of those picks. I think I'm going to parlay all three, to be completely honest, especially the Alabama first half. I think I saw a stat earlier this year, Alabama, they've covered like the first half number like 80% of the time. I mean, don't quote me on the percentage, but it was something very, very high.
No, you're right, Trav. I've been taking Bama first half lines ever since I've been able to bet. So it's been very profitable the years. So,
It also cracks me up again to see another Big 12 under. Just thinking, just 3 years ago, that number never would have been at 50. It just cracks me up how it's changed. And then real quick, I was scrolling through Twitter. I saw someone's projections of they tiered the quarterbacks, and Sam Hartman wasn't even in tier 3. He wasn't in tier 1, tier 2. I mean, it took everything I could not to just troll the guy on Twitter. I just put my phone down. I just don't know how someone could not put Sam Hartman up there as one of the best quarterbacks in the country. I think that over hits with ease too. Dev, how about you? What are your 3 plays or your 3 locks?
Yeah, first one, it's a Friday night or Thursday night game, I think. Louisville Duke. I'm taking the over 59.5. Duke, their defense is piss poor, to say the least. They give up points to everybody. I think Louisville hangs 40 on them at least, maybe even 50. And then Duke, they have some big plays here and there. They can score a little bit. So I think this over under is just a little bit too low. There's some value on the over there. And second play will be Stanford. I got them at plus 5.5 this morning. I just looked, that line is down to Stanford plus 1.5. So, I mean, I'm still giving them out plus 5.5 for our podcast picks, but I still like them on the money line anyway. It's more of a fate of Cal. Cal is very bad. They're a bad Pac-12 team. So is Stanford, but I'll take the home team here. Rivalry game, crosstown showdown. Give me the better coach team in Stanford. And last play is Missouri plus 9. They're at home against Florida. Missouri, their ATS record is 2-8 on the year. They have not covered very often, but they've covered 2 out of their last 3 weeks, I believe. They're starting to play, better than Vegas thinks they are. And this is 100% a fate of Florida because they're in shambles. Them and Texas are the 2 teams right now that are in disarray. They have no idea what's going on. Both their coaches are just, thrown in the towel.
They have 1 foot out the door, essentially.
Kind of. Mullen, I don't know why. I thought he'd do well there at Florida, but he's on the verge of getting fired. And then obviously, Texas with Sark, he's a first-year coach, so he won't get fired. But still, those 2 programs right now are in shambles, and I'm fading them from here on out, I think, because Florida almost lost to Stanford last week. They got lucky to win that game. Stanford hung 40 on them or some shit. So that's embarrassing. I think Missouri scores points, keeps it within the number, maybe wins outright. And yeah, so Missouri +9, Stanford +5.5, and the Louisville Duke over 59.5. Those are my 3 locks.
2-8 against the spread. That just means they're due, right?
Yeah, it's like, you're playing roulette and black comes up 10 times in a row. You got to bet on red. I know that the odds are still 50, almost 50-50, but you just have to do it. They're due.
Exactly. Well, I'll give my 3 picks, and I'll start. I already talked about UTSA -4.5. Deb, I know you like the opposite there. UAB +5. Battle of the Sharps again this week. I guess we're going to have to throw some a beer wager on that or something, see who comes away with that one. My next play, UCLA -3 versus USC. You talk about a team that's also in shambles, and it's kind of weird. We got Florida, Texas, USC, all just very, very subpar, which doesn't happen very often to those schools. I like UCLA in this spot. USC is not really playing for much. It is a rivalry game, so that scares me a little bit, but I think UCLA gets it done. And then I mentioned earlier, I still like Baylor again this week on the money line. I believe they're -1 now, but this was a pick 'em when I took them this morning. I just think they're the better team. Kansas State, they've been playing better as of late, no doubt. But Baylor, they're just, they're the best team in the Big 12, and they definitely have looked at these last 6 weeks or so. So give me Baylor on the money line. So our free play for the end of the podcast here that we've given out to our Siege VIP clients. We're looking to the island this week, 11 o'clock game. Give you something to watch as you get home from the bar Saturday night, Hawaii +2.5. That'll do it for us on this episode of the Siege podcast. Hit us up on Twitter @PickSiege. Share your favorite plays of the week. Let us know which of our locks that you like. And don't forget to ask us about pricing to become a Siege VIP client. Tons of winning left to do this football season. Remember, always gamble responsibly. Let's cash some tickets. We'll be back next week.
Each coming.